What's up, guys? Hi, I am here and you are here, and I am so sorry. What a mess that we have all been through this past week or two. My goodness, guys, I'm so sorry. I don't been in this business a long time, and this has not happened. So you'll have a wonderful story to tell your kids someday about the spring of the coronavirus, 2020, the worst St. Patrick's Day ever. Anyway, I'm sorry to you guys who had your tests canceled. Remember, you are going to test eventually. This isn't going to last forever. So whenever it is that you're able to take your test, in June or later than that, regardless, you're already really, really well trained. You've already completed your black belt training for SAT. The only disadvantage that you and every other kid in the country has is we gotta, make sure you stay warm for that test. So, hello again, guys. The purpose of this seminar is to get you guys, or keep you guys warm rather, for that date that you guys are going to be taking the SAT on. What we're going to do today is basically what you can do every single time you ever want to practice for the test. Whether you watch just this video or other videos, I hope that between what we've done in class, if you've done class with us or tutoring, if you tutored with us, or just if you're just watching this video solo, essentially this will give you an idea of what you can always continue to do as you prepare for your test. Remember, improvement always has three parts. You need to, of course, practice, and that's what we're going to be doing partly today. We're going to send you guys on 3 different practice drills through different portions of the test. Second, though, you can't just practice. You can't just throw a ball in the direction of the basket and then not look to see if it goes in. You got to see whether it went in or not, and if it didn't, adjust your throw. Second thing we're going to do is, of course, look at the answers. I'm going to review a few of the questions from each of the sections that we're going to do. Not all of them, but I'm going to give you some resources for where you can get the answers and hopefully some better clarification on any answers from that section. You can also email me or reach out to me or somebody else who can help you kind of figure out why you got question 17 wrong, why the answer was in fact A and not B. And the third thing is, and this is the important one, people often forget this, you need to take some notes on this. You need to remember what happened. So maybe your goal was to miss only 3 wrong in a section that we did, but you missed 4. Well, what happened on those 4? After you've gone through and reviewed them, try to write that down somewhere. I'll show you through our book where you might write it down, but really anywhere, as long as you're taking notes on this, you're going to collect those notes, because when you then go repeat this process and do step 1 over again, before you do step 1 the second time, step 0 will be to review the notes from the last time to make sure that you can remember those things and hopefully not make the same errors over again. So let's kind of get started here. First, a little bit of explanation about what is going on. We are going to be working from Practice Test Opal today in the full book. Now, if you do not have this full book, do not worry. I'm going to show you where you're going to get this practice test. But those of you in the full course who are reviewing, who have this book, this will be really easy for you. You're just going to come here to the back to page 279 to, I need both answers for this, 7, 9, in case somehow you can't. I don't even know why you'd be watching this if you can't hear me. Never mind. In any case, you'll be there, and then the answers when you get to the end are on the very, well, not this pink page, on the second page before that. You'll see the answer key here, so you can check all your answers, and I'll be going through a few of those. Now, for those of you who are not in possession of this book or have lost it or something, we are going to, let me share my screen with you guys here, show you where to get all this stuff, because this is the same as the practice test that everybody else uses. So if you go to pjtestprep.com, you will see over here, even if some of these headers look different, you'll always see a couple of things that are important. Download our SAT goal sheet is something that you're going to want to do. If this is on a different page, it might be on our links page here or possibly on our SAT or ACT classes. Look for something that's download our SAT goal sheet. and print this off, because this is going to help you track your performance on this. Some of you have filled this out already. If not, add your verbal goal score here and your math goal score here. And this chart tells you kind of how many you can miss from each section. We'll come back to this page in a moment. Second, you're going to need the material. And for that, you are going to want to go to the links page. So click there. And at the bottom, you will see, you can also just go directly to the College Board's website. But at the very bottom here, you'll get this right here. View all SAT practice tests and answers. Click that. That'll take you to the College Board's website, where, if you scroll down a little bit, Practice Test Opal is the same exact thing as SAT Practice Test 6. So we're going to work on Practice Test 6. If you click the See All link right here, what you mostly need is this one, and if you need the answers and explanations, you'll come down and get this one later. Of course, as I said, if you have the full book, you've already got all this. So take a quick look here, and we will work off of Practice Test 6, where the first passage is adapted from Daniel, try to butcher his last name, starts with an M, about this passage about Nawabdin electrician. That's actually the passage we're going to do. So we'll come back to these pages in a moment, but if you need any of that stuff, it's on the pages just as described. So start by, and if you have to pause the video to do this, get those practice materials there. If you have already done any of the sections or the passages that we're about to do, that's okay. Just do a different passage out of that practice test and you'll still have the answers if you've downloaded those. If you've done that entire practice test, just download one of the other practice tests. We are going to be going over stuff from Practice 6 Opal in the explanations, and so if you have to do a different section or something, that those explanations won't be as helpful to you, but they will still, you'll still get the general idea. You just can skip that part of the video and move on to the next section and just kind of try to check your own answers. In fact, that's where eventually you don't need these videos anymore, because you can just do this on your own. Okay, so enough of that. Hopefully that is all clear. Let's take a look at Practice Test Opal, aka Practice Test 6, and let's dig in. I also want to get that answer sheet up so you guys can see here. Let's look at that goal sheet. Okay, so as you guys are getting ready to do these practice sections, first thing you want to do is prepare yourself for what is about to happen. So I like to just write a little goal here in the sheet. So first we're going to do a reading section. So maybe I'll just make a little R there, and then you can write today's date. And we're going to do, if you're using the Opal page numbers, you can do like, PT6. You'll have to forgive my screenwriting here. It's not as precise as it could. Actually, I can zoom in. It'll be easier. PT6, but like questions for the reading, we're going to do questions 1 through 11. My goal, and here's where you can sort of scroll up and see above, like let's say that I'm going for a 600. Well, if you consult that chart up above, you can see that generally you can miss like 2 or 3 questions per section. We're just going to do one section here, and if you're missing about 2 to 3 per section, you'll be on pace for roughly about a 600. When I get done, I'll come back here and write, boy, I had a bad day, I missed 4. And then you'll probably want to make notes like these, write down what you missed. Obviously, these notes here are for a grammar section, so they're not as applicable, but you might say, oh, I missed question 3. I fell for a never said that. The right answer was actually D, which I was fine with, but I fell in love with A, for example, because I thought it was something that was true in real life, and maybe it is, but that's not how the SAT works. Or, maybe question 8, oh, I picked a too extreme answer, so I'm gonna mark that down. And if I notice that 3 out of 4 of my answers are never said that's, I probably got to watch out for that next time. And so that's the kind of note that I might make, and that's what you can do, on wherever it is you're marking all these notes down. So we'll want to use this page as goals. Just for reference, today we're going to be doing passage 1, questions 1 through 11 from a reading section. We're going to do a writing section, also questions 1 through 11. Actually, this might be questions 1 through 10. We'll figure it out in a moment. And then for math, we're going to do section 3, all. This is from Opal, aka practice test 6. So feel free to write these down right now and set your goals. You can do that now if you'd like, or you can do it before we start each section, and then you'll record what happened afterwards. I'll give you opportunities to pause the video. So that will take care of that. Let's have a look then at today's lessons. So first thing I want to talk through is the reading. And this is what I was referring to with kind of point 0 or part 0, where before we start a section, we want to kind of remember what we're looking at in this particular section. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, if you've watched this video multiple times or you have already done a lot of this and you want to kind of bulk this lesson up a little bit, once you're hitting your goal in one section, then it's time to double your drills here, and maybe you do 2 passages in a row, in which case you just double all of the numbers in that section. So don't be afraid to depart a little bit, do a different section than the Nuwab-Din passage we're going to read, or maybe do this one and another. If you feel like you're good when you only do 1 passage, but it's when you start doing 2, 3, 4 in a row, theoretically, eventually you would build up to setting goals where you're like, I'm going to do a whole entire section 1 from a practice test and see if I can hit my goal there. Okay, so anyway, when we're tackling a reading section, remember guys that first of all, overall review, you can jump around. If you don't like passage 1, you don't have to do passage 1 first. Passage 1 typically is what we call a story passage, which is about characters doing stuff. You're always going to read these for the main idea, but in a story passage, the main idea has to do more with the characters. As well, I won't spoil it. We'll see who the characters are in a moment. But that's something you want to remember when you're delving into any story passage. Know whether or not you're good at story passages or not. Some people hate these because they're more scientifically minded and these are weird and the characters act weird ways and do weird things. Other people really like these because sometimes they're a little more interesting. Sometimes there's dialogue and stuff like that. It's up to you. You always want to start any section with whatever passages or problems seem easiest for you. So when tackling a reading section, you got 3 phases. Step 1, read the darn thing. And that's what we're going to do first. We're going to mark this up a little bit. I'll do a little bit with you, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. Step 2 will be to deal with the questions, which means reread them if they're confusing. Sometimes they'll just say something easy like, what's the main idea of the passage? In which case, you know, that's not hard to make a prediction for. If they say something more complicated, like in a paired passage, what would the paragraph author of passage 1 say in response to the author of passage 2's critique in line 47 of what passage 1 said in line 3? Your mind's gonna explode for a minute. You're gonna have to read that a few times, process that, and review. So don't be afraid to take your time with the questions and perhaps make a prediction. That can often really help the accuracy. The third thing will be to move through the answer choices. Remember that the only 3 ways they ever write answer choices incorrectly on this are the answer is either never said that, like maybe it's true in real life, they didn't actually say it in the passage. Sometimes those get really picky, so be careful about that. Second is too extreme, which sometimes overlaps with never said that, but it's just the right answer, but like too far. You know, if this passage was about Eleanor Roosevelt being an effective and persuasive first lady, and the wrong answer choice was Eleanor Roosevelt was the best first lady. I didn't say best, didn't talk about the other ones, so that's too much, too extreme. And the third example is out of scope, meaning they asked you a question from paragraph 1 and then there's something from paragraph 4, or they asked you a big broad question and they gave you a tiny little detailed answer, or vice versa. So make sure it's regarding the question that you were asked. And that's one thing that people who don't read the questions very well will sometimes do wrong. They're like, oh yeah, they said that in the passage, but did they say it in the right part? Was that what the question was asking? So keep that in mind too. Okay, so I'll start this with you guys. I'm gonna try to not like help you too much on this because this is supposed to be a drill. You guys got the basics already. But where we would start is by reading and marking up the passage. So I'm gonna just remind you how we would do that, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you guys. We'll have you set a timer. This should take you about 13 minutes. If you're planning on doing all 5 passages, you need about 13 minutes. I don't know why I'm holding up my fingers for toes for this. But generally, if you're finishing in this passage in 13 minutes with all the questions, you are on pace to complete the section. If you already know you're going to skip one of them and just do 4 passages and guess on the 5th one, you'd have a little bit more time, but I'll leave that up to you. So remember, when we are marking this up, we want to always read the intro. This is not particularly helpful, but perhaps this guy is an electrician. I mean, that's helpful. So let's read just the first paragraph, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. Another man might have thrown up his hands, but not Nawabuddin. This is kind of the main character, it seems like. His 12 daughters, good night, this dude's been busy, acted as a spur to his genius, and he looked with satisfaction in the mirror each morning at the face of a warrior going out to do battle. Nawab, of course, knew that he must proliferate his sources of revenue. This is a fancy way of saying, like, he needs to make money if he's going to support 12 girls. Salary he received from this dude, maybe this is a character, maybe not. We'll figure it out as we go. Pretending the 2 wells would not even begin to suffice. So I guess this is one of his jobs, but that's not enough. So he set up a little 1-room flour mill, runoff, a condemned electric motor, condemned by him. He tried his hand at farm fishing in a little pond at the edge of his master's field. He bought broken radios, fixed them, and resold them. He did not demur even when asked to fix watches. It sounds like here's just like a bunch of things he does for money. So I might just like mark that as stuff he does. Maybe some of this notes are like, let's make sure we know it's about this dude. So N works lots of jobs. And then here we have like examples of him doing lots of different jobs. Even that enterprise did spectacularly badly. Oh, and in fact earned him more kicks than kudos. For no watch he took apart ever kept time again. All right, so maybe he's not the greatest at all these things, but it does sound like he's a resourceful dude. So that is sort of the main idea of paragraph 1. Obviously, I took a lot of underlines here, and we might not always need to take so many underlines. Depends on what kind of a reader you are. But we need to just get a general sense. So ask yourself, what do I need to do to get the main idea? Okay, so now it's time for me to turn this over to you guys, and you're going to read the rest of the passage. You're going to go for that main idea in the story passage. It is about the main character and any other characters that occur, and then you're going to answer the questions. Remembering to read the question and perhaps predict, and then focusing on the answer choices. Guys, please pause minutes. Perhaps we already did a little bit, but 13 minutes generally is how long this should take. So go ahead and pause the video, and when we resume, we will go over a couple of these questions. All right, guys, let's get these answers going. Good work. Okay, so hopefully that passage was not too horrific. And we are going to go first check the answers, which if you are on this practice test are at the end. So you can pop over to the answers if you're in the full book, there practice test 6. Oh, look, it even tells you what test it is here. You'll go here and read the answers in this section right where I'm pointing. If you are too lazy to look them up in your book or on the answer sheet, you can also just deal. Oh wait, that's actually only 10 questions. So you're welcome to try those. When you have checked your answers, you can pause the video again if you want to, but let's grade your test and go back and record your answers on page 195 or that goal sheet that we talked about before. And then we'll head back and discuss the passage. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of these. How'd you do? Did it go okay? Did you hit your goal? Regardless, we can learn from some of these. And the ones I want to check out here in question, Well, let's start with number one. Some people have trouble with this one. They miss one right off the bat, which is always a demoralizing way to start your SAT. The main purpose of the first paragraph. So that's not that complicated a question. Remember, step 2 is to understand the question. And we'll tell you what, give me 1 second. I have a young child pounding on my door I have to take care of here. But think about which one you picked and which one might actually be right if you got this. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. Just like real life, there are distractions. Okay, so some of you guys incorrectly put A for this one. And when you found out that Nawab is not a loving father, you were like, what? But he totally is. And here's the thing, he totally is, probably. But where precisely does it say that he is a loving father? And even if you can find a line, is that the main purpose of the first paragraph? Remember when they ask you, what's the main idea of the first paragraph? They're not asking for one line. They're not asking for the whole entire passage. They're asking for one middle chunk. That first paragraph, as you remember, we marked up, talked about how he went off and did lots of different stuff for money. And they spent actually a lot of the paragraph highlighting all of the different things that he did, which is C. Now, a lot of people don't get this wrong because they didn't like C. C does seem like reasonable, but sometimes they just fall in love with this little thing because they're like, oh yeah, that's so sweet. That part made an impression on me. I don't care. Neither does the SAT. That is not the main idea of the first paragraph. That is one tiny detail in the first paragraph. If you're still fighting this, how many sentences, how many words did they spend talking about him as a father? Okay, how many words did they spend, how many sentences did they talk about his money-making ventures? Ah, there you have it. So if you picked A, which is wrong, it's not that they didn't say that, it's that this was an out of scope. This is too detailed for a medium-sized question. Got to be careful of this. All right, let's take a look at another one that people have trouble with sometimes is number 7. So we're down, oops, overshot it. It can be inferred, and we're actually going to do 7 and 8 together because this is one of those evidence-based questions. These, I go back and forth on these because sometimes it's fine for some people to just do question 7 first, and then after they get it done, go ahead and do number 8. So if that's how you did it and you got both of them right, then keep on keeping on. Like, fine, I'm not going to correct you if you did it right. If you missed one or both of them, though, or you felt like that was really hard, you might want to try a different way. I think that this pair actually might be easier to do in reverse. So I'm going to do it that way right now. I'm going to do 8 first. Even though that's not necessarily how you would always do it, but do keep that in mind. And just no matter what, be looking out for these paired questions. So if you're going to do this in reverse, what you'd want to do is say, I need to figure out which of these lines of support here, A, B, C, or D, even has anything to do with this question, the previous one. Now, reasonably be inferred casts the idea that this is what we call an inference question. They even use a form of the word inference here. Inferred means they're not going to literally say it in those words. They're just going to, well, they're still going to support it because everything's always supported on the SAT, but maybe not as directly as it would be. Basically, the way you can think of inference questions is there's no way this is not true based on the stuff in the passage. So we need to figure out, and here's the key with this. So if you missed this, it might be because we want to know Haroni's, if I'm saying that right, Haroni's motivations here. Nawab would probably like a motorcycle because it would make his job easier. But why does Haroni give him one? If you summarize this passage earlier, and this is always the kind of key, but basically This guy does a lot of money making ventures. His kind of main gig is doing these tube pumps or whatever for this Haruni guy who's like a business owner. And he actually like goes to talk to Haruni, and he's like, "Whoa, man, this is really tough. My life is hard, and I'm old now. Like I can't just be bicycling around everywhere." And so Haruni's like, "What do you want?" And Nawab's like, "Can I get a motorcycle?" And Haruni's like, "Yeah, okay." And then at the end, Nawab chills on his motorcycle, and everything's rocking. So not a lot always happens in these passages. This is about the detail of why Haruni gave him the motorcycle, though. So which of these lines here even has anything to do with that? Let's take a look at 65, 66, 75, and 80. Take a peek at starting at 66. Just says he didn't particularly care. Oh wait, that's the second one. Let's start with A. And what's the solution? Asked Haruni, seeing that they had come to the crux. If you don't know what crux means, that might have thrown you off a little bit. It just means come to like the main point. But this line, A is going to be wrong because this just doesn't even say anything about why Haruni did it. Like he didn't even make the decision yet. And so this has nothing to do with what he's thinking or what he decides. Here we get into a little bit about his motivation. He didn't particularly care one way or the other. Like, you know, as savage as it is, he probably would have been just fine with like letting Nawab quit and firing him and getting somebody else, except that it touched on his comfort, a matter of great interest to him. And that is a weird way of saying something, and you have to decode these passages sometimes, especially the ones written a long time ago. But basically that means somehow this is going to make his life easier or harder. Put yourself in the boss's shoes here a second. If the boss is like kind of a mean dude and doesn't really care whether his employee is happy or not, if it makes him more or less comfortable, maybe he would do something about it. It sounds like what happens is Haruni's like, yeah, okay, you can have the motorcycle because it'll make my life easier. Like maybe it'll be annoying for him to hire another guy or train him up or something. So he just as soon throw a couple bucks at this dude's way and, you know, take care of it. So this is actually not a bad answer. In fact, as we'll see, it is our right answer. If you didn't pick this one, maybe you need to take a little more time reading this. Now, C is a pretty lousy answer. It just says he even managed to extract an allowance for gasoline. That again doesn't talk about the motives for why this guy did this. The other one that people like to pick is here in line 80 and 81. This is a trap. He could now range much further, doing a much wider business. But who is that? That's Nawab. That's Nawab Dean. He can now do more stuff, but that isn't necessarily why the guy gave him the motorcycle. So you have to pay attention to who we're asking you about. This as highlighted portion here is not about Haruni. This is about Nawab Dean. So we can't pick this one. It's not about the right person. So B will be the answer for number 8. And then that allows you to pretty easily go back and say, well, why did he give it to him? Because it was like easier for him. This is a trap. Yeah, Nawab has to work hard to support his family, but it never gives any indication that Nawab or Haruni even cares about that. Like, as far as we know, Haruni's sort of a mean, cold dude, and he just doesn't really care. This is a better answer. He sees benefit to himself by giving Nawab a motorcycle. This is just a very clear, never said that, most eloquent, that's the most obvious too extreme answer ever. Threatens to quit, not directly. Never technically said that. He kind of is just like, you should fire me. And he's like, what do you want? He's like, a motorcycle. It doesn't say he said, I'm going to quit unless you give me a motorcycle. So if you picked either of these, you fell into too extreme, never said that traps. If you picked this one, that is maybe something that might be true, but I don't think we have any evidence for that. And we have the evidence for this. We just found it by doing this question first, which is, again, an argument for why you might do question the second part of one of these prayers first, because sometimes it saves you some work. Okay, if you missed any of the other ones, you can find the answers to this on our website, pjtestprep.com. Again, if you go to the links section, if you didn't do this already, probably should have done it already. Perhaps I should have been more clear. But if you go back to this page and you go down to practice test 6 and you download the answers to 6, here are the answers and explanations, you can see what happens on all of them. So like if you miss question 2, you can be like, oh, here's Nawab and more kicks than kudos. Sometimes the College Board's answers are like on the, I don't know, they're sort of dry. They're sort of comprehensive. Like they're very sort of thorough, I guess, but they don't always say with things in words you can understand, which is, what we try to do. So forgiveness if they're a little bit raw and they don't use words like never said that too extreme, but they kind of do in code. So use these to help you further, but you can also ask me if you can't figure one of them out. Okay, let's head back to our second section. We're going to do a timed drill now on section 2, the writing. If you need a quick break, feel free to pause and take one. I'm going to keep plowing through them. So let's head to section 2 in practice test Opal, aka practice test 6 from the College Board. It's also in Khan Academy. I don't know if they call it practice test 6 there, but they should. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna give you a quick refresher on paragraph 2 or passage section 2. I can't even talk. Okay, so the way we do this is, remember, you generally just read these things as you kind of go. And a lot of them, like question 1, like question 2, are just grammar questions that you can address as we go. The best way to review one of these once you have gotten it wrong is to try to categorize which type of question it is. This is going to be an assignment question, or excuse me, assignment question is the one that looked like 3 with big text here. But this one, and in fact 2 as well, these are both connector questions. So you might write connector over here in the margin. In fact, I'm going to do that because after I give you a moment to try this section, we're going to come back and look at question 1 specifically. I'm not trying to give this one away. I won't tell you what the answer is, but it is time for you to read passage 1 here, do questions 1 through 11. Once again, if you've already done this one, just go find a different set of 11 questions and then skip my explanations and go right to the explanations online. But check out questions 1 through 11. For this, you have about 9 minutes, technically a little bit less than that, 8.75, 8 minutes and 45 seconds. But I've already talked over the first 15 seconds anyway. So go ahead and pause the video now and try this passage 1 through 11 after on page 195 in your goal sheet, marking your goal for this. Take your time. When you're ready, resume the video and we'll talk through a couple questions. Go. Okay, let's check the answers. As you know, you can hop over to the back page at the end. Those of you who can still see my screen. And for future reference, I would always just print off this answer sheet, and then you can access it more easily. But I'm going to start with explanations. If you need more time to mark your score, your right or wrong answers, or what you did, go ahead and take the time to do that. That's the glory of internet. You can just pause me and whenever you want, even if someone just is yelling at you from the other room, like my 3-year-old toddler. In any case, let's review. And this first question, as I stated, is a connector. Remember, connector questions are the most common type of grammar question on the English section, arguably the most common type of question, period, on the writing section. This also goes for the ACT if you're doing that section. They just love these. So this one, it's not that hard, maybe, not to make fun of you if you got it wrong, but if you just remember a couple of basic rules about connecting punctuation marks, this one violates a lot of them with the wrong answer types. So we've got in the winter of 1968, some dudes did some stuff, poured some stuff into Lake 227. This is one of the 58 freshwater lakes that compose Canada's lake. Okay. Rule number 1 about commas, besides the read for a pause thing, you can never, ever have a comma separating 2 complete sentences. So that is what they are trying to do here. Now, you could have a comma between 2 not complete sentences, which is why eventually we will pick this one. Lake 227 is one of these freshwater lakes. So that would be like saying, I have a dog, comma, a nice German Shepherd whose name is Rover. You could, I poured some stuff into a cup, one of the many cups I have in my cupboard. D is fine. If I'm trying to do C, I don't want to have, well, this thing then wouldn't be a complete sentence. You can't just say one of the lakes. And remember, I like to cross stuff off that I don't need. So you could kind of just end it after one of the freshwater bodies. That wouldn't make any sense. So I can't have a period separating or leading something that's not a complete sentence. And finally, this would need a comma here, and it would even still be longer than this. So this is a connector. Think about which one you picked if you didn't pick the correct answer. By the way, if you are getting these right and you're like, yeah, that one was so easy, why are you spending time talking about this? Skip ahead a little bit. But maybe there's some nuance here that you can pick up as well. But if you got one of these other answers besides the correct answer D, you have to check to see what grammar rule you're still not following. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is on the next page, number 7, which is another grammar question. Let's take a look at number 7. And the correct answer here is going to be A. If you picked something else, you might be wondering why. Well, this is a verb question. My handwriting is even worse when I have to write it on a computer screen. Here's the key with this one. They love doing this with verbs and pronoun questions. You have to figure out what was teaming or what things were teaming, if that's the key. And the key here is have. That's the thing that was teaming. So this actually is fine the way it's written. The answer will be no change sometimes. Just cross off the rest of the stuff. It's half of the lake containing the phosphates, or just say half was teaming. You wouldn't say half were teaming. You wouldn't say half are teaming. Half teams. Some of these also violate the rule about verbs where you're supposed to keep the same kind of verb tense going. So track what types of verbs you're using, what tense we're in, if I'm using INGs in other places. Mostly just try to eliminate the stuff that's crowding it up and see which sounds fresher to you. So that is that one. Both of those were grammar-based questions. The first a connector, the second a verb. Yes, we are going to do an assignment question here. We're going to go to number 10 for this last one. Because these are fairly important, especially for those of you who are getting high scores and going for really high scores. These can be real tricky. Like if a kid's only missing 6 or 7 of them in the whole section, it's often a bunch of these because they're different. They're not really about grammar. They go a different place with this. And so for this one, you got to get a warm up into the passage. Basically, they found out if they poured this phosphate crap into this lake, we got a bunch of algae, and that's not good because the algae is bad for lakes. So once they got to that point, it says their findings were shown off by the, give me a break, that's weird, that's out of tone. This is good. If you missed 8, by the way, it's a word choice question, but that's not what you do with findings. You don't show them off like it's a sports car or a cool new pair of kicks. The research demonstrated a clear correlation between introducing phosphates and the growth of blue gene algae. For example is wrong. This is another word choice / connector question. We go subsequently for this one because then after they got all these results, lawmakers in Canada passed laws banning phosphates in laundry detergents, which also had been entered in the water supply. It just says which had been entering the water supply. So at this point, the writer wants to add a second policy outcome. So it has to be a policy outcome, meaning people actually did something, and it has to be from the research described. It can't be from something else, which means that it's not enough to just have like people heard about this. That's not a policy outcome. C is something that is different. This is like a different study the guy did 6 years later, which doesn't have anything to do with this lake. It's actually like, it's a different lake. Ours was 227, I think. And sulfuric acid, it's not the same study anymore. And this one isn't even like anything that anybody did. This is just stuff that happened in the lake for a while. So even though this is about the United States and instead of Canada, many individual states have also adopted legislation to eliminate. So other policymakers did other things, similar things, but different things to fix this. Okay, questions on that? You can ask your video screen. No, but if there are ones that we didn't go over and you don't get, like I said, review the answer key on in the back of your book, or the answer summaries and the directions, or reach out and contact me if there's one you still can't figure out. Okay, next thing I want to do is cover the math, and let's actually go back to page 195 again. And if you haven't marked your math goal, you'll want to do that here. Think about how many we're going to do, and we're actually going to do the entirety of section 3. So this actually will be an exact replica of how many you'd want to get. If you didn't notice already, in the 2 previous sections, you should double or half, I guess, the number that you can get right. So if you're trying to get a 700, you can only miss 2 per 20 questions, meaning if you just did 1 question or 1 passage of 10 questions, you really can only miss 1. 90% is usually what it takes to get a 700. Then again, if you're just trying to get a 500, you always just need to get about half of them, or 10 out of 20. Now, for the math section, come down here and add your math section. We're going to do the entirety of section 3. Write your goal here, add what you did to the reading and the writing sections here. And the section we're going to be on is down on section 3, roughly 300, page 313, no, 18. Here we go. Or, of course, just section 3 in practice test Opal, aka practice 6. The first question, you've got Salim wants to buy tickets for a tennis match, something we're all wanting to see these days. Okay, so let's take a look at this passage. And again, I'll just introduce you. I also would like you to go review any previous notes you have about math. What do you stink at? What concepts do you need to remember? What tricks do you want to remember? Generally, there's 3 ways to do any math question. You can, of course, just do the math if you want. If the question's easy and or you're good at math, just do that. You can also try a trick. Try make up numbers if you see that there's variables. Try steal numbers if the answer choices are, numbers. Try simplifying. Just try measuring the darn thing with your finger. Try putting it in your calculator if it's not section 3. And then last but not least, you can always just piece out and do a different question. Your job is to just get as many of these you can, as many of these as you can out of 20. So I'm going to turn this over to you guys once again. You will have, when you're doing the whole section, it's quite easy. You will have 25 minutes to do this section. So I'm going to give you guys that time. Now, set a timer somewhere on a clock or on a watch or something. Mark your goal, review the ones you want to do, and when you are ready, you can review this and resume this video, and we'll take you through a couple of them. Okay, go. All right, guys, let us review a couple of these. I'm going to draw a few on here. One other thing I forgot to mention earlier is that these questions do go easy to hard. I'm going to try to do 1 easy, 1 medium, and 1 hard. Actually, 1 kind of easy, and the other 2 will be sort of hard. Again, you don't necessarily have to do the hard ones, but those are good to learn, even if it's one that you're like, well, that one was hard, but that's a good tip. I might remember that next time. First one I want to look at is number 4. Which is only number 4, but it's not super easy for everybody. It has a really nice trick, a nice reminder. It's also a good reminder of how algebra problems work, which is that if you can just make your equation, here they already gave you one, but then you can just monkey around with it, that will get you the answer. We also are going to think about this in terms of a strategy we call simplifying, which is you just always should look for ways to monkey around with stuff that they give you. So there's kind of 2 ways you could do this problem. One way is maybe it's obvious that the left side could be FOILed. So if you did that for your first term, this is actually all you're going to need to do to get the answer. You multiplied your first terms together, you're going to get p squared x squared. And then you'd have some other stuff with, blah, 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 blah. At the end, you'd have p squared negative here, but whatever. We got the middle stuff actually will cancel out because what you might have also noticed is this is a difference of 2 squares, aka dots. This is just something they hit over and over and over again within systems of equations and other algebra problems, where you might realize, oh wait, I'm supposed to separate this off into like the square root of this. and then the square root of that, and then one's plus and one's minus. So that gets you there too. For this one, we're looking for whatever is in front of the p, which of course is going to be 2. But here you also could say, look, p squared is the thing that's in front of the x, just like 4 was in front of the x. Well, p squared is 4. Again, the answer needs to be 2. So if you didn't get that one, you really got to store away that whole like difference of two squares thing and just the idea of monkeying around with the algebra. This one can actually be attacked either from the left or the right. Obviously, the simplifying and algebra methods are close cousins to each other. If you want to call it a trick, you can call it a trick. But either way, remember that for a problem like 4. Algebra is the most common tested thing on this test. Okay, I'm going to move a little further here. And a lot of types of problems here, but I'm going to go to one that scares the bejesus out of a lot of people. Number 14. People just don't like word problems a lot of the time. I understand it. It's a lot of words and scariness and so forth. This is also number 14 out of 15 in terms of the multiple choice. So this problem is hard, I would say. One of the harder ones in the section. So maybe you don't have to do this. Let's just use this as a learning opportunity for word problems in general. Take it really slow and work your way through. And I don't think this problem needs to be as confusing as it looks at first. So reading through, a laundry service is buying detergent and fabric softener from its supplier. Okay, there's no math here, that's just set in the context. The supplier will deliver no more than 300 pounds in a shipment. You don't have to do this, but sometimes it helps ground the problem in real life if you just think about why not. I don't know, maybe their truck's not big enough, or they just, we don't trust you with that much detergent, you're gonna build bombs out of it. Either way, fine, they can only get 300 pounds total. Each container of detergent weighs 7.35 pounds, so I can't buy 1,000 of these, or that'd be way too much weight. And each one of fabric softener weighs 6.2 pounds. Now those numbers might come up later in your problem. In fact, I'm kind of already leaning a little bit more towards A and B than I am towards C or D, because like they have the 3, 7, 5 in them and not this, whatever this number is. I guess they're doubling it. That's just a misinterpretation of some later stuff. Anyway, let's keep moving before we try to chip away the answers. Service wants to buy at least, and here's a key one, twice as many containers of detergent as fabric softener. So rephrase that sentence. What is there going to be more of? There's going to be more detergent. There's going to be a lot more detergent. So it's going to be more than twice as much. And here's where we get into our variables. If D is for detergent, oh, that was nice of them, and S is for softener, where these are non-negative integers, don't worry about this. This is usually them just like covering their butts, because that doesn't make any sense. You can't buy negative containers of things. This doesn't help your problem at all, just like as them keeping some physics professor from Yale from arguing that, well, technically, if you bought a negative number of things, the universe would collapse. I was like, shut up, guy. Here's why you're wrong. Anyway, which system best represents? Okay, let's just take this slow. So it's up to you to figure out which of these two inequality parts is a little easier. But let's start with the twice as many containers of detergent as containers of fabric softener. So we need more detergent. So I'm going to make D real big and then S is like small. This might be a good place to just for a second like pick numbers. So could we say that like if they only ordered one, they got to have at least twice as many. So D could be like 2, or it could be 3, or it could be 100, or 9, or whatever. So how can we make that make sense? Well, it seems like if it's got to be at least twice as many, you'd have to double S, and then over here we'd have just one D. And let's look at the versions of this. So if we had one of these, this side would be like 2. And this side's got to be at least 2, but it could be bigger than that. It could be 3 or it could be 9. So we're looking at one of these dudes here, which is where something like A would work. This would not work. This one would be okay. This one would not be okay. So we're either between A and C, which we didn't like for another reason. So I'm kind of thinking A. Let's look at the other part of it though. Basically, you've got each detergent weighing 7.35 pounds. So if you want to find out how much all the detergent weighs, you need to multiply D times 3.75. And you can see right now where A is starting to emerge as being good. And you can do the same logic here. However many things of softener you got to multiply that by 6.2 pounds each. And when you add all that weight up, it's got to be less than or equal to 300. So that's what takes us to our answer of A. It's a little nitpicky to do this problem. Like, some people just don't want to do this one because it's time consuming and you actually have to think about it a little bit. But I would ask yourself, if you do think about it, if you do take it slow, is this too hard for you or not? And you can always decide to wait until later and do this at the end if you have time. You can also just not do the problem at all. But I submit that maybe with a little bit of making up numbers to help you and just kind of working the problem through slow, it's something that could be done. Okay, so take a look at that one. The other one I want to see, and this is going to be our last one here today, is on the grid-in section. A reminder, questions 14 and 15 were quite hard, but they reset to easy again, or at least they usually do on 16, 17, and 18. The one I want to look at is the last one in the section, which is 20. And I want to do this one for a couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of people miss it or don't get to it. Number two, it's geometry, which we haven't covered yet. We've done 2 kind of algebra problems. The other thing that is interesting about 20 is that, well, I guess 2 sub items here. I don't know that it's super hard if you remember this math, which just goes to show you that all the grid-ins are supposed to reset and go easy to hard again. Sometimes even the ones at the end aren't that bad, so maybe they're worth looking at. The other thing is that if you didn't get this problem right, and if it seems really hard to you, it's probably not a trick thing. It's probably just you don't remember this geometry. So there are some problems on the test where you do have to know a little bit of math. As much as we talk about just tricking your way through this test, yeah, sure, helping to be good at math does help. And so let's take a look at this problem 20, and let's see what we would do to it. And you might want to write down the math rule here if you don't remember it. So we've got a circle, and we've got A and we've got B, and I don't know that I've drawn these in the right place. I got to be careful. And this arc length is pi over 3. What fraction of the circumference is the length of arc AB? So basically, is this just like a little bit of it, or is this a lot of it? Did I misdraw this and it really should be like A and B? Well, the key here is this number, and the pi might tip you off that this has, I mean, this almost sounds like unit circle stuff, but it doesn't require you to remember the unit circle. All it requires is for you to remember that thing at the very end where, actually, let me go to the beginning of any given math section and remind you that they give you all these formulas right here. The circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, which means that whatever the radius is, it's 2 pi's of those. That might remind you here, guys, that the entire way around any circle is 2 pi times whatever the radius is. Well, this isn't 2 pi, this is only 1/3 of 1 pi. So it's basically 1/3 of a pi. I got to get to 2 pi's. What do I have to multiply 1/3 of a pi by in order to get to 2 pi? Well, you can go on a carb-free diet here and slice the pi's out of this problem, and then you got 3x equals 2. Or excuse me, what am I doing? It's incorrect. Forget this. 1/3 x equals 2. Multiply both sides by 3. And despite my egregious handwriting, you can see that the answer is just going to be 6 of these. That's not the answer. It says what fraction of it. So it's 1/6 is the answer. 1/6 is what we got. I actually did draw this kind of intentionally to scale, but 6 1/3 pi's will go around to get you a total of 2 pi's. So that is actually a math rule you have to remember, either from just stealing the thing from the instructions at the beginning, or pulling it from your memory of unit circle, or if you're like, well, I don't remember that, that was too long ago. Well, remember it now, because it caused you to not hit your goal perhaps in a math section. So That's section 3. Again, if there are ones that you want to go over that we didn't, those will be in the answer and explanations found on the College of Arts website, which I just linked you to at the beginning of this video. But that's how you do this, guys. We just did, I don't know, probably about a fourth of an SAT. You can do more. Maybe you want to go and do, you know, another section from the writing, another section from the reading. I'd suggest if you didn't hit your goal and want to get back on the horse, do that again in a couple of days. Do this again in a couple of more days. Once you're hitting your goals in only one section, then redo it again coming up later. Like hit your goals in one, then do a double, then do a whole complete section. If you just keep hitting your goals over and over again, you probably will hit your goals on the real test. We didn't touch section 4 today, but it's just like section 3. Do half of that section or do the whole section all at once and keep marking those goals on that goal sheet and see how it goes. So with that, guys, I'm going to leave you here and take you to the next video or the next practice exercise that you guys are going to be doing. But you got plenty of material here. There's more online. You can keep doing this stuff whenever you need to. Oh, that's what my children are. They look so adorable when they're not pounding and screaming on the board, the wall. Anyway, guys, thank you. Good work today. And hell, replay this video if you want, just with a different set, or wait for another video, or just keep going on your own. You'll get there. Thank you, guys. We'll talk soon.